Hello, this is John with Theology Ed. This is part 11 of the iPet Goat 2 Explained series. In this video, we are going to look into ritual magic again, and we're going to learn a lot more about thelemic magic. And it's going to have a purpose. It's going to help us to understand more of iPet Goat 2 in one way in particular, and even possibly to help us identify times a bit more precisely, but times and types of events that they're going to do. In particular, what it's going to help us to do, we already have seen that there's some repetition of symbols in iPet Goat 2. But the difficulty has been trying to understand the chronology and trying to understand the purpose of the repetition. It's one thing to know that we have repetition. It's another thing to know why that repetition exists. That's the difference between knowledge and understanding, right? If I know something, I can know that and not understand why that's the case. But once I know why that's the case, well, now I understand whatever that fact is that I know. And what we're going to do is try to move from knowing quite a bit about iPet Goat 2 to understanding it in a more profound way by understanding the ritual magic a little better, and then seeing what that gives us for starters, and it's going to give us a foundation, I think, to understand more in future videos as well. That said, ritual magic, of course, I'm going to be talking about details here a little bit. Ritual magic is a horrible thing. It's terribly immoral and very dangerous for our souls, and obviously no one should ever do this. These people are really, sadly, they're terrible people. I mean, they turn everything upside down. Whatever is good, they call evil. Whatever is evil, the most evil stuff, they call great. They're totally confused and unhappy, miserable people. So just throwing that out there at the outset. So let's go ahead and look. Thelemic magic. The objective of thelemic magic is knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. That's their language. Let's look here in Thelemopedia again. In the system of magic, the single most important goal is to consciously connect with one's HGA. That's the holy guardian angel. A process termed knowledge and conversation. By doing so, the magician becomes fully aware of his own true will. So the magician becomes familiar with his own will by way of connecting to the HGA, the Holy Guardian Angel. And there's some debate amongst the Thelemites, apparently, over to what extent the HGA is just inside you, like you're divine or something, and that's why coming to know your own true will is by connecting with your own sort of divine holy guardian angel inside you. That is not, especially as Crowley developed his thought in life, not where he settled. But he says, we'll continue. For Aleister Crowley, this event, this knowledge and conversation with the HGA, and becoming fully aware of your own true will, this event was the single most important goal of any adept. It should never be forgotten for a single moment that the central and essential work of the magician is the attainment of the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. Once he has achieved this, he must, of course, be left entirely in the hands of that angel. Okay, so let's keep going. Crowley later identified, I should add, now we're going to talk about Crowley's holy guardian angel. Okay. Now, in 1904, Crowley. This is when Crowley got this whole thelema religion. He had 3 nights or 3 days of visions, basically, in which over his left shoulder he heard what he thought were audible voices from a spirit, and he wrote them down. It was dictated to him, the Book of the Law. That's it. And we'll learn about this. He says that came from his holy guardian angel, named Iwas, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Iwas, as his own. Crowley later identified Iwas as his own personal holy guardian angel, and more. He said, I now incline to believe that Iwas is not only the god once held holy in Sumer, and mine own guardian angel, but also a man as I am insofar as he uses a human body to make his magical link with mankind. Down here, Crowley still went to even greater lengths to insist that I was an objective entity apart from himself, even going as far as to declare in no uncertain terms that the holy guardian angel is not only entirely objective, but is also not to be confused with the higher self, as in his final work, Magic Without Tears. Here's what he said. The holy guardian angel is not the higher self, but an objective individual, meaning there's a distinction between you and your HGA, okay? He is not, let me say with emphasis, Crowley said, a mere abstraction from yourself, and that is why I have insisted rather heavily that the term higher self implies a damnable heresy and a dangerous delusion. If it were not so, there would be no point in the sacred magic of Abramelin, the mage. And we all know you wouldn't want to say there's no point in the sacred magic of the Abramelin, the mage. But anyways, for them, that's a pretty good argument, I guess. Now, he continues and he says, this is about him. In magic and theory and practice, Iwas is firmly identified by Crowley as, who is he? The devil, Satan, and Lucifer, whose emblem is Baphomet. That's why I put Baphomet up here next to our little meditating guy, right? We're going to call him our magician for this illustration, and we're going to pretend like his holy guardian angel is Crowley's, and that's Baphomet up there. Okay. Which is an interesting thing, because Crowley is saying his holy guardian angel is a real entity distinct from himself, who speaks to him in the corner and gave him the religion, and who is it? The devil, Satan, or Lucifer, whose emblem is Baphomet. So that tells you a little about that religion. Let's keep going. But of course, he says it's a good thing. Lucifer is the one that helped us become divine, giving us the knowledge of good and evil, and all of that. Okay. So he's gotten a bad rap. Now, we continue. So let's go ahead, and now we're going to define. So we have the objective, knowledge, objective of thelemic magic, knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, sometimes just K and C. And this knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel is identified with union with God and uniting the microcosm with the macrocosm. Of course, a macrocosm is a large scale reality of something, and the microcosm is sort of a miniaturized version, it's sort of a simplified way of putting it. But the microcosm is the small version, and the macrocosm the very large version, or sort of a pair of analogous things. Okay, so let's look here. This comes from thelemicunion.com. A really interesting article. Although magical operations could and can be undertaken for other goals, such as wealth, health, or love, these kinds of operations were only to be undertaken to place the aspirant on firmer ground by which to attain knowledge and conversation. Crowley writes, there is a single main definition of the object of all magical ritual. It is the uniting of the microcosm with macrocosm. The supreme and complete ritual is therefore the invocation of the holy guardian angel, or in the language of mysticism, union with God. Okay? Of course, he's talking about a different God than Christians would, for example. But he's not talking about God. He's talking about the holy guardian angel, which is, for him, was Baphomet, the devil, Lucifer, or Satan. Okay. Now, the goal of magic, in the broadest sense, is here conceived of as knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, and it is equated in the language of mysticism with union with God. Okay, and this link between microcosm and macrocosm. And the microcosm is in you, they're going to explain, and the macrocosm is going to be the reality of the world. And so you're going to go from microcosm to macrocosm. You're going to match them up in magic, and that's how you're going to transform the world. And we'll get the details here in just a second. There's a process that they affirm for doing this. In magic, it's different than yoga. Crowley includes both yoga and ritual magic in thelema, and they work together. Yoga apparently goes from the outside in through sort of an internalization and meditation and introspection. Magic goes from the inside out. It goes from the microcosm, which is within you, and it goes out and externalizes to change the world outside you. Okay, so this process of magic is traversing outward achievement, traversing outward, moving outward from inside you, achieving union through ritualistic and ceremonial means. This union with God or union with the macrocosm, union with the whole of existence, this sort of thing, to change reality. The magician is unified with her holy guardian angel, HGA, learning his will perfectly. Learning his own will, the magician's own will perfectly, presumably by way of this union with this demon. But the magician is the microcosm, and every element within him, so internally in the magician, every element of this microcosm has a correlate on the macrocosmic scale of the universe. In other words, they affirm that the universe apparently is like infinite, and that we, each of us, are infinite. And that inside us, if we really understand ourselves and we can tap into sort of our divinity or whatever, we'll see that there's parts inside us that correspond to all the parts of reality. Every part of reality. And so if you can sort of master yourself and know these rituals and know what you need to do to be a magician, you can, by looking inward, go out and change the world. Okay? So the magician is the microcosm, and inside of me has matching parts that correspond to everything out there. And if you know how to leverage this, you can change things out there by looking inward and changing you, and by doing magic like that. Okay? The magician gains control of her own being, sees by control of your own being, and extending it outward to make proper contact with the macroscopic correlates that you can change the world. So that's how the magicians, the thelemic magicians, think this operates. It thinks this happens. Okay? So here's an explanation of that from that article. In magic, the magician traverses outward, achieving union through ritualistic and ceremonial means. So the practice of magic culminates, to begin with the latter, the practice of magic culminates in the identification, or more broadly, unification of the magician with his or her HGA. If we take the magician to be a microcosm, then according to the magical theory of the universe, so this is a theory right there, their magical theory of the universe, as understood by Crowley, every element that comprises the microcosm of the magician has its correlate on the macrocosmic scale of the universe. It is the task of the magician to A, first thing, discover and gain control over every element of their own being, and then B, extend every element of their own being, of their being outward, to make proper contact with the respective correlates in the macrocosm. So we have this picture I made. We've got our magician here. He has his will. Somehow he makes connection to Baphomet or to his holy guardian angel in this magic ritual, And Baphomet, remember, Baphomet is associated with Harpocrates and this sort of spirit being and being throughout all of creation, apparently. Okay, so there's an association somehow, and I put a question mark here because it's fuzzy for me still, but there's a relationship between the HGA and the macrocosm such that the HGA can be understood as the macrocosm in some respects, but it gets complicated because it's not as simple as, oh, Harpocrates is the macrocosm, because that's not actually accurate. It'd be a better deity to pick for that, and thelema would be Nuit. And I plan to talk about that in probably the next video if I can get to it, because it's got a really interesting, really interesting application in another scene, several scenes of iPet Goat 2, and I don't think we'll be able to understand the whole thing without making that connection. But anyways, there's a relationship here. But the point is, he has to get in contact with his HGA, and then his will somehow gets right. He understands his will. He's going to understand himself. He's going to use his will to control and master sort of who he is and what parts inside him he wants to match to reality outward, when he wants to conquer the external world by looking inward. He's going to control himself and have the proper relationships, control the right parts of himself that correspond to the right parts of external reality that he wants to actually change. And then he's going to have to make this connection properly through ritual magic and following the right steps that the messenger or the Crowley's angel, the devil, gave him for in the book of the law about how to do your spells, how to do your rituals, whatever. And you're going to have these, you follow all the procedures, and you have proper control of yourself inwardly, and poof, the world changes. You now have control over the world. You're like a god. Okay. The magician willfully invokes, evokes, or otherwise brings into manifest conscious awareness elements of the macrocosm through ceremonial means by creating a magical link between the element in the macrocosm, whatever's out here, a magical link between that element in the macrocosm they will to manifest and its appropriate correlate in the microcosm, which they themselves contain. Okay, so I just sort of explained that a second ago. But notice I have right here in this picture, I have what's in him, and then there's what's out. There's the microcosm, and then there's the macrocosm. But it's not just that. It's not as simple as there's the one microcosm and this enormous macrocosm and nothing between. The magician will, in steps, increase his reach to the full macrocosm. And I for example, if I were thinking, if you have a mediocre magician, he may not be able to get all the way out to changing everything. He may be able to just get out so far. I don't know. But the idea is that this is progressive, and there's reach. They have reach. Okay. In magic, the magician directs their efforts and powers outwards, extending the domain of their consciousness to encompass vaster regions of hidden elements in the external universe. So you hear that. They're extending their domain, the domain of their consciousness to encompass vaster regions, one region, then another larger region, then a region even bigger than that, until finally the great magicians have more influence. And that's probably why it's so important they have Lilith doing the magic, right? She's the greatest magician. She's a fantastic magician. Okay. And so it's a Lily or a Lilith in that room in the magic circle doing this. Now, we take a step here, or look here. So I've already shown that. So let's sort of see the connection here between even Harpocrates and Heru Raha, and so Harpocrates and Rahu Arkut and all this horror stuff. Yoga and magic have as their end goal union with the one, all, or not. Union with the angel, that's your HGA apparently, which he variously describes as the creation or manifestation of the child. Okay, that's Harpocrates it's going to be. But this child can be viewed as the primordial or precognitive consciousness of the adept. So you can look at it inwardly. Just like we saw yesterday that in the previous video, part 10, that that Harpocrates is associated with inner strength and these sorts of things, right? This is the cognitive well-being of the person. This is sort of their mental states, their strength, their primordial precognitive consciousness, and so on. Okay, the dwarf self, the phallic consciousness, which is the true life of man beyond his veils of incarnation, the true or unconscious will, the silent self, or the holy guardian angel. Okay, so there's a lot of gibberish in there. I'm not even get into it. But okay, so some of it sounds funny. It just sounds ridiculous. But anyways, this child has a dual function or aspect. So this is, now we're talking about Heru Raha. They're describing Heru Raha as a child principally, but having the dual aspect, reflected in the twin nature of the child of the Aeon, Heru Raha, as both Harpocrates on the one hand, the babe in the egg of blue, or the god of silence, and Horus, or Ra-Hoor-Khuit, the hawk-headed mystical lord, and the god of war and of vengeance. This dual function is a symbolic representation of the operation of the child, and so on. But the idea is we're making connections again. This article is making connections again to between this ritual magic and the goal of ritual magic and this association with your Heru-Raha and the two aspects of the Horus character, basically. Now, this child consciousness is born into the world as a material manifestation. Okay? So in magic, you bring about this child, whatever you have in your mind consciously, to extend it outward to bring it about in the real world. Okay, and material manifestation, an extension of the microcosm into the macrocosm, the rapture of the earth in union with the material conditions of existence through the techniques and processes of magic. Okay, so the big point here, the magician is going to be controlling their own inner states through their will. And by doing this, they're going to reach different levels. They're going to domains or different domains or regions of reach. The reach is going to vary, and it's going to sort of expand as it goes. Okay, and that's how magicians do it. So let's look here. We're going to have her as our magician. There's Lilith, and we've got whatever is inside her will, and what her microcosm, all the parts of her the microcosm, what she has in mind. What does she want? What's the goal? What is she trying to change in the world? And then it's not just going to be poof, the world's supposed to be like that now. We're going to see layers or levels, regions of reach. We're going to see her inward desires manifested in small scale, slightly larger scale, even larger scale, and grand scale, okay, in the video. And this is what we see. An example of this, right, as close to the microcosm as you can get is the apple coming out, representing the birth. But then we get the birth representation also in the calendar. It's still close to her, but it's away from her a little more. Then we get it out there in reality, and then we have a full birth at the end, okay? And that's just a simple illustration of it. Here's a clearer one that we've already gone through in detail, so we can talk about it, and everyone who's seen the previous videos will understand it pretty well. We have the classroom board. To the right, we have our Three of Cups and Two of Cups representing June 21st through about July 11th, and they are not love. And we have the LOL, which begins the scene immediately over the O in the reversed love, okay, because we're reading right to left given the way it's set up, letters here and everything. And we had the O over the O, and they split, and we see that they were a representation of the eclipse. And then we have the dragon, and we have the doomsday clock, people being harmed. Then we have the moon again. We have retrograde motion. Here we have our representation of the mark of the beast, devolution, and whatever happens over here to the coasts, okay, into the U.S. So we have that pattern. We have the lightning as well, the lightning bolt, which is, again, a representation of the mark of the beast and the two aspects of Heru-Raha. On the one hand, Harpocrates, on the other hand, Ra-Hoor-Khuit, which was mentioned in a footnote in one of Crowley's works. Okay, the two halves of the brain. Now, then we go outside the classroom, and what do we get? Look at the similarities. Here we have the hearts or the cups that indicated the date range. In here, if you look closely, we have a 6 in the reflection, roughly around the same spot. And depends on how you read it. You may be able to see a 2 and a 1, but 6 for sure. And if you, as it pans back a little bit further, zooms back a little further, we see the 6 more clearly. Then we go from right to left, and what do we get? Over here, we get an eclipse. If you look, I'm a little far away, but there is a circle indented in the wall that's very clear. It's a perfect circle, okay? And when I'm in closer, it's easy to see. Maybe I'll try to zoom in just a little here. Oh, that's not how I zoom. That's not either. I don't know how to zoom on this application. I'm using a different one than I was using. It looks nicer, but it doesn't zoom. So what I'll do is I'll expand. Okay, so you can see the circle here. And we have the sun represented above it. We have the eclipse passing, just like the LOL, the illuminated O goes up, and the one stays fixed is there. Same thing. Then we go to the left. What do we have? We have our lightning bolt, just like on the board. Okay, I'll push this down here so we can see. Okay, we have our lightning bolt. We also, what did we have between that and the lightning bolt, roughly? Our doomsday clock. There it is, midnight, midnight. Okay, here's our retrograde motion, F equals negative F vector equation, representing the velocity of an object going one direction and then turning and going the other direction at the moment at which it has stopped to change directions and stations retrograde. The vector equation is true, okay, because F, the movement in one direction is 0, and the movement in the other direction, negative X, is also 0. So it's true equation. And here we have the trident representing Neptune with the R, which represents Neptune retrograde, and we get that confirmed in the snow in a minute. But so we get the retrograde motion. We're getting the parallel. So we've moved out. We're getting it a little bigger this time with a bigger clock. We're getting it outside, but it's going to pan back again. And what do we get? We still have the doomsday clock. From this angle, we have our eclipse. We have the moon with the buck ears, the bunny ears and legs, just to show you that's a rabbit moon, but it's definitely a moon. Okay, we've got our eclipse, our moon, our doomsday clock, and we have in the snow the very large trident. I didn't get that screenshot here, but you have a very large trident representing the retrograde motion of Neptune again, and we have a lunar south node here, lunar south node that tells us exactly what we're looking at. That is the July 5th buck moon eclipse. It's a penumbral eclipse, and so we're getting this on a bigger scale now. We're stepping back and we're getting repetition now that we've scaled it up. Okay, and so we've scaled it up, and then we say, well, boy, can it get any bigger? It does. We go here, and what do we have? Going right to left. If you look over here, we have the bright red of the sun. That's like the sunset over this side, and over here we have our buck, our rabbit in the sky, moon being hugged by a demon. Okay, here's your dragon. Again. Okay, here's the hangman, if you want to call it that. This is where the people are harmed. And we go from right to left. And now we've gotten so big that we can't even fit it all on a scene. And we're going from right to left. We've got the eclipse over to the hurt, to the dragon, to the buck, moon, and we get this whole thing. We even have the sharks. The shark coming out of the water, attacking what? The coasts. Okay? So we're getting the same scene, but it's bigger. Okay? And it's growing up. We're getting closer to the macrocosm at this point. And we even go back again, and I'll come back to the scene in a second. We go back again, and now look. Oh, well, I'm trying to depict what's going on here. So you see how we're going from microcosm to macrocosm. But because we don't know what's inside her, we have to go from, using this video, we have to go from right to left to say, well, we know what she's thinking. We know what the plan is now, what her hope is, what she's trying to change. Because we're getting the repetition, and it's being effective in the video, going from the small scale to a slightly large scale to a much larger scale to an enormous scale. And then we can even go further out where they don't even fit it on two scenes. Right after this, they go through, and here you see the red sunlight back here, right? We get to see it again. At the red sunlight of the eclipse, what happens? The CIA representative, looking like an Osama bin Laden Muslim character, who's a terrorist, of course, is getting ready to attack. Okay? And then the very next scene after that goes to the buck moon. So now we go from the eclipse to the buck moon, same exact pattern, but now it's huge. It doesn't even fit on the same screen even at all. They had to do 2 scenes separately. You had to do the solar eclipse scene followed by the buck moon scene, and it corresponds to everything we've seen so far, which is the solar eclipse time is still preparation, and things are already bad by the time of the buck moon, right? Because now we've got this mess. But here, look, we have the 7 and 5 etched in lightning here. It's a little hard to see from this vantage, but it's there. Here we have the buck, the rabbit moon, and it says rain. We have an oil catastrophe, and we've got the changed landscape. Okay, so we're getting this on a huge scale now. Okay, and that scene continues where it goes from dark to, it looks like we have moonlight here because the color of the light is different. The moonlight in the video is whitish, right? Just like the moon behind the boy when he resurrects out of the mosque, it's a white light. It's not the red light. The red light, if you go back, that's sunlight. Here, red, red. Buck moon, white. Sunlight, red. Red, white. And here in this scene, we get one last scene before we go on to the birth of the baby. That's where we get the next scene after the Statue of Liberty scene, is where we get the egg with Harpocrates. What we see here is we get a little red from the sun, and it looks like we get the moonlight over here. And we're going to have to investigate this scene. I'm not going to get into that today. I've got some ideas about some things, and there's other things I just don't know. Okay, but one thing that's really interesting in this scene, if you look closely, this here, I don't know if anybody else has said this before, but this is the neck, to the chin, to the mouth, to the upper lip, the nose, face. This is an open mouth. A part of the Egyptian ceremonies of the dead, there was an open mouth ritual of the open mouth, which is when they would take the dead person, open their mouth, and prepare to shove something in their mouth, food, because they need to be fed so that they would make it to the afterworld, or to their afterlife, because they got a journey they have to go on. But and so this looks like a pretty clear depiction of that, but I'm certain there's going to be more to this scene than just that. But what you have here is you have a little sunlight here, moonlight there, which may even be another way of hinting at this sequence, right? Because it's going right to left. We're getting it again. We may get some numbers in here, right? So here you have the 621. See the 2-3? Well, in date-wise, that's not just 2 numbers we threw together right now. Those are 2 numbers that in the sequence actually make sense if we're starting with the eclipse and going to the buck moon, right? Because chronologically it happens right after it. In fact, it happens the first day after the Neptune station's retrograde. So maybe you can look around in here and say, do we have any symbolism related to what we were expecting, given a clear pattern that we now understand? Okay, and so we have a better hope. Of finding things. What we also have here is, look where the Statue of Liberty is in this line. It's between the 2, and it's submerged, right? It's between the 2, the red sun and the moon, and it is in trouble. Now let's go back to that scene here. Nope, this one. Yeah, this is a large-scale version. We're not the very largest, but this is about as big as it gets while fitting in a scene on the same screen. The eclipse is even off camera, okay? But over here, your eclipse, that'd be your June 21st. Over here is your buck moon. There's your July 4th, 5th. In the middle, again, is when New York seems to be under attack. Okay, it's not on June 21st, and it's not on July 5th. But it sure looks like it gets it in the middle, just like you get over here. Again, I'm not going to say, oh, that's when it's going to happen. But you can see that there's an interpretation of this video that makes sense and is consistent with a repeated pattern in the classroom, eclipse, doomsday comes shortly after, the people are hurt, then we get the sharks and the events. Look, here, eclipse, people hurt, Then we get the moon and the sharks. Now, if you go out here, what do we have? When the sun is eclipsed, we have the ritual of a terrorist. This event looks like a terrorist event. Could there be a terrorist event that comes before a water event? Could they be separate? Because on June 21st, we have a terrorist preparation, but on July 5th, Buck Moon, we have a rain event. R-A-I-N. J.K. Buggout pointed that out. Okay? Are we going to get both of these? Are these separate things? Is the rain event happening after some water event? Does this water event happen between them? But you can see now that we have this pattern and we understand the magic, their understanding of magic and how they view themselves as thinking something internally, that's the microcosm, and then having different sort of regions of reach as they extend outward from them. So the further we get away from her, we get the repetition because she's reaching a little further. Okay? And so we get our dragon up here we're getting far away because she's a great magician. She's able to pull it all off. Okay. So I don't want to keep going because I have another really long video. But that's where I'm going with this now. I'm going to keep investigating this. There are other places in iPet Goat 2. In fact, the whole thing is like this. And the key is to identify when are we looking at the June 21st to July 5th dates. And at some point, we get all the way to December 3rd, 2021 at the end of the video. Where in the middle did we change the focus from June 21st to July 5th to, say, the rest of this year or the beginning of next year or the following year, the latter half of next year, 2021. Where do those breaks happen? Because we're looking at these events and we say, oh, there's a nuclear bomb. Okay. Or, oh, there's, a lot of water there. Where did it come in? At what point? Where do those events happen? Right now we sort of have this really big range where we're like, oh, stuff's going to happen. Probably. But maybe by doing this, we'll be able to dissect the video better. We're going to be able to analyze it better, break it down to parts, divide it up, and understand, well, that's talking about this period, that's talking about that period, that's talking about that period, that's the other part's talking about that other period. And you can tell by the repetition and the expansion of their reach of the reach of the magician in those scenes. Okay. All right. Either way, this is, some of this is speculative, some of this is theoretical. I'm trying out new ideas. Give lots of feedback, comments, questions, challenge me, show me where I'm wrong, because I'm sure I know I'm not right on every single thing, because I'm trying to figure this out. Usually I have to tweak things a little bit as I go in future videos anyways. So throw out ideas, and thanks a lot for watching. All right, take care. Like, subscribe, share, all that stuff.